everyone. It's Meg. I'm hopping on a minute or two early here. I think it's 2 minutes early just to make sure everything's working and say hello to people who are in the room early. Thank you for coming. If you have, I see people logging right in. If you have a minute while we're getting started and situated, I would love to hear from you. Say hello, tell me your name, your business, where you're from. And that way, as I'm going through the slide deck and talking through some of the things that I'm seeing in AI mediated search, I can use y'all as the examples for what I'm seeing and not just sort of like theoretical or my clients, but how this might be relevant to you. So, hi, Sarah. She says, oh, I did your audit for you and you're busy implementing suggestions. Yeah. I have been working with a lot of people, just saying like, here's the first place to start. And sometimes that's all we need, right? So you might leave this webinar and go, okay, I know what I need to do. And in 6 months, I'll be ready to work with Meg, or in 3 months, I'll be ready to work with Meg. And that's totally okay with me too. So Sarah, I'm thrilled to see you here. Cassia, I believe that's how that's pronounced. I'm sorry if I've forgotten. Home stager living in Germany. Michelle says hi. Nicole, digital accessibility specialist, which I love. I have loved for a long time, but as my vision is getting worse, thanks to glaucoma, I might be calling on you, Nicole. She's in Minnesota. Michelle's a web designer in Chicago. Christine is from New York City. CFO on speed dial. Hi again, Christine. Jessica teaches yoga to people in midlife and beyond to help them with long-term health. Yes, I feel like there's a gap in, either it's you're young and fit and you're using yoga to get more flexible, or there's like silver sneakers and there's not really a lot in this midlife space. So Jessica, that's exciting to hear. Zoa says, hi, still have Zen and Vitality Functional Wellness Studio, but now also Intentional Vitality Retreats. I love that addition for you, Zoa. That's great. Amy is a culinary nutrition coach. Amazing. Okay, well, I'm going to hop right in because I want to be super respectful of all of your times. Oh, hey, Megan, building fan bases for your businesses and fantasy rom-com business. We talked yesterday, so I know all about that. Thanks for letting me know it's you. I don't have a list of participants in Demio. In Zoom, I can be like, all right, here's who I know. But in Demio, I only know who's introducing themselves. So thanks to everyone who introduced yourself. I'll get to know you more over the course of the next hour. Oh, Kelly's local to me in Ithaca, New York. I'm up in Rochester, so not too far. Okay, and let me share my screen with you. If y'all just want to, a couple of you give me a thumbs up that you can see the slide deck as I'm working through it, that would be very helpful. Sandra says hi, Erin says hi, cool. Thanks, Michelle, thanks, Erin. Okay, so hi there, my name is Meg Casebolt, pronouns are she, her, and I am the founder of Love at First Search. I also, I love s'mores. I am a podcaster. I'm a singer. I am a mom of 2 kids. I also write romance novels on the side, and I have 2 podcasts. And for the past 8 or 9 years, I have described myself as being an SEO consultant. And recently, within the past probably 12 to 18 months, I've changed that title into being a search discoverability consultant, because what we think of as SEO is shifting very, very rapidly. Oh, Zoa says she can't see anything. I don't know if anyone else is having that problem. Maybe do like a quick screen refresh. Michelle can see it. Erin can see it. See slides. Okay. Yeah, Zoa, I don't know what your browser settings are, but it might be something on your end. I'm sorry, I can't troubleshoot more than that. Thanks to everyone else who's letting me know that it works. So search has changed so much in the past, like 2 to 3 years, but really the past 2 years, search has fundamentally shifted the way that people are being found, what they're showing up for. And so that's what we're going to start with today. We're going to work through this agenda. I want it to be very actionable setting here today. So I'll do a quick like how search has changed and what that means. If you've done SEO in the past, what you may need to do more of, or if you're starting from more new content, what to think about as you're creating. We're going to talk about what AI actually gathers information about you and what it cares about. we're going to work through the 6 signals that AI is going to be looking at and diagnose what are some of those patterns that I regularly see among business owners and how we can start to shift sometimes the content, sometimes the infrastructure, sometimes what we're creating, sometimes just the kind of the way we're creating it, so that we are more likely to be trusted, to be cited, to be recommended in those search results, whether those search results are Google or ChatGPT or Perplexity or Gemini or any of the above. And then we're going to talk about some of those simple, quick fixes and how you can work together with me in the future if you want to. So, quick overview. If you've been on my email list for a while, I've written about this ad nauseum, so I'm going to move through it pretty quickly, which is that, up until about 3 years ago, the best 5 words that clients used to tell me when they were working with me is that their clients would say, I found you on Google. And now it's just as likely that people are going to be saying, I found you on ChatGPT. I found you on Perplexity. You showed up in Gemini results. I saw you in the AI summary, right? The tools that people are using for search have changed drastically. And the way that search results look is also so different. Because yes, we still sometimes see those search engine results with the blue links, but at the top of the page, we have a summary, we have a synthesis. And sometimes it looks more like this, where there's mentions, but there's not citations. They're not linking back to your website. And sometimes they're extracting the information from your website and using it in the synthesis, but not crediting you. And so we have to have different approaches so that these tools, again, whether people are searching on Google or more of a synthesis-based or retrieval-based AI platform, so that these tools trust us enough to include us in these types of results as well. And some people have said to me, well, I don't really want to, I don't want to bother with ChatGPT. I just will stick with Google. And this is where I always say, like, Google is an AI-based, mediated, retrieval-based search system now. There is no just Google anymore. Honestly, Google has been more AI than AI since about 2015. It's just all been in the back end. They had a thing called RankBrain that started in 2015. So this has been slow and steady progress. This isn't new. Google has been more of an AI-mediated search system for a while, but it's becoming more and more prominent, right? So if you want to show up in either those rankings, which again, still very important for our businesses, especially if you're running a local business, you want to show up in the maps. If you're running an information-based business, you want to show up in the people also asks, you want to show up in the summary, you want to show up in the AI synthesized answers. The rules have changed. I'm seeing a lot of people who are here in the introduce themselves in the chat box who have worked with me before and done the basics of SEO. They've created the content, they've structured it in a very structured, organized way. And now we have to go a little bit, like there's an extra layer on top of it, which is not just single pages, but building trust. So before we get there, let me do some definitional work. SEO has shifted, expanded, depending on how you want to think of it. It used to be search engine optimization. Now we're thinking about AI optimization. Sometimes it's called LLM seeding. Sometimes it's called GEO for generative engine or answer engine or large language model optimization. So if you're seeing those different terms around the internet, there are nuances and specific differences between them, but to a great extent, those terms are just sort of this outgrowth of what SEO has become. Being able to make your content easier for these AI tools to understand what it is that you're trying to say, to trust that you are the right person to share that information, and to include you in their summaries, and to recommend you when people are looking for where to turn next for more information. So here's some of those big shifts. It used to be in SEO that you would rank for pages. It would be like, this is the page that is linked in the search engine results. Now you're being evaluated not so much for the page, but for the specific answer to a question. What is vitality? Oh, you want to describe what vitality means, and then maybe you show up in the AI summary and you don't necessarily show up in the search results. Same with the rankings. It used to be that everything was, I just want to get to page 1 on Google. But I was just in the recent Signal group. We just had a Q&A right before this, and somebody was showing up number 29 in the rankings, but she was getting traffic because she showed up in the summary for a specific term. We're focusing less on keywords and more on meaning. I'm going to linger here for just a minute because for a long time, I feel like all I talked about was keywords, keywords, keywords. We need to figure out what it is that people are searching for. And then we need to answer those questions in a structured way. We need to integrate the phrases that those people are searching for so that way Google can exactly match our content with the queries. And the AI tools, Google included, are much better at figuring out why are people searching for this. And so you don't have to have that same sort of like keyword density, keyword stuffing that you needed to have several years ago. We're also moving from an economy that's based on traffic of, oh, I got 1 million page views this month. We've moved into, I am trusted enough by these systems that they are willing to share my answers, that they are willing to recommend me. So it's not just how much traffic can I get onto my website. That's not a question that is quite as feasible to rank yourself on. Even my clients who are doing incredibly with search right now, they're not getting as many click-throughs because people are getting their answers in the summaries, and things have just changed. So traffic is no longer the primary metric that we're using to evaluate success. It's more like, am I getting recommendations? Am I getting citations? Are people still interested enough to come seek me out? So if you built your website and your content strategy with rules that were existing before these changes took place, and you're seeing a decrease in your traffic, a decrease in your intake forms, a decrease in your leads, it's not like this is not a you problem. This is a systemic change. And so now with the priorities, they're shifting away from keywords, which are still a factor, but they're not the starting point. We're moving into a search strategy that understands meaning and wants to understand the way that you think and approach things. So instead of thinking about, okay, what are the pages of your website? The tools are now trying to evaluate what's the entire system? Who is this person? What is their body of work? It's not, I wrote one really great blog post that went viral and brings in 80% of my traffic. The systems are trying to go, okay, why were they able to write this? What else have they written that supports this? Where else on the internet are they reinforcing this information? Single page is no longer the unit of measurement. It's like looking at everything that you're creating, that entire body of work, and not just what's on your website, but what are other people saying about you? And where have you corroborated that information through additional resources around the internet? And if you're saying, oh, I'm a culinary nutritionist, but you recently made that pivot and you have old people talking about how you were just a chef, then that might be confusing. So AI might be less likely to recommend you if you're saying one thing and the internet's saying other things about you. And that happens so often. We'll get into this in some of our diagnostic work. It happens so often where even for me, right? I have been studying and making this pivot for 2 years involuntarily because SEO changed so quickly. And I still have old podcast interviews where people are describing me as a search strategist and how I do keyword research and how I help them with that. And it's like, well, that was true then. But now if people are looking for me now, I need to sort of say, here's why that changed, right? We have to create these expectations of who we are and what we do it for. And the tools want you, instead of starting from the keywords, they want you to start with what's the problem that you're solving? What's the meaning of the work that you're doing? And worry less about those key phrases. Here's the 5-word phrase that I want to rank for. And instead demonstrate understanding of an entire topic and be consistent in the ways that you're describing that information. Because you want to be trusted as a source worth citing, worth extracting information from your website to include in those synthesis, worth recommending. So here's the reframe in one slide. AI doesn't rank systems. It evaluates. AI doesn't rank pages. It evaluates the entire system, the entire body of work, which is why it's really hard for me to explain this now, because I'm like, But how do you explain this in an hour? So that's what I'm going to try to get to in just a second. After a quick sip. Any questions so far, anyone? Okay, we'll keep rolling because it might become clearer too as we walk through it. So what does AI care about? How does it decide what to include? What do those results look like? How does it prioritize what actually matters? Okay. So here's how it used to work. The old system had this like sort of 5-step process. So the first thing is people would go to Google, they'd type in their query. And then Google would go out to the internet and it would crawl based on that query, looking for the exact match. Who has said something about this? And then it would index, okay, who around the internet has talked about this? And then it would rank based on, in the very old models, just like how often you said that phrase. But in kind of the newer models, it would be more like who has gotten the most behavioral signals that say, yes, this answered my question, right? Who has more information about it, but it would rank you and say you're number 3 in these search results. And then the person who did that query would click through to read the page. They wouldn't usually get their answer on Google. They would get the list, the directory, and then click through to get the information that they were looking for. Maybe it would be in the title or the meta description. For the most part, it was like a traffic generation system. It would be you go to Google and then you go out. Now, still starts with a query. It might be that, 5-word prompt that you type into Google. It could still be that same query, or it could be a conversation that you're having with ChatGPT or asking Claude something. And then those AI tools, again, whether it's Gemini or Google, those AI tools now have enough knowledge to be able to say, what's this person trying to do? Not just what is the phrase, but why are they asking this? What outcome do they want here? And then they'll get, depending on the model that you're using, they might work entirely off their training models and synthesize an answer. So if you're in a more synthesis-based tool like ChatGPT, like Claude, most of those answers come from training, unless you specifically say, go tell me about something else, or you're asking about something that needs more real-time feedback. If you're looking for more of a retrieval-based tool like Google, like Perplexity, it's not going to work quite as much off its training. It's going to go out into the internet and say, what's happening right now on the internet? Great, here's the answers. We'll actually have an example in a little bit where I'm like, try this in ChatGPT and try this in Perplexity because the answers are going to be different because ChatGPT doesn't update as quickly, right? But both of them, all of them, are going to then synthesize the answer to try to answer it themselves. And they may or may not include citations for where they got that information from, because some of it might be from training and that's not citable, and some of it might be a mention of who you are but not have a citation, and some of it might be, yes, this is where I got this information. So like the AI summary is fantastic with citations, saying this sentence came from this website. So depending on your tool, you may or may not get the citation. And what are the actual things that AI tools care about? What are the signals? What are the things that it learns to trust you about? This is a framework that I came up with because I did so much research on this and there was so much like information that didn't feel organized to me. That these are the 6 signals that I have figured out. I don't think there are more. If there are, I will add them onto the framework and write probably 40,000 more words on each of them. But here's what I came up with. This is a framework that I call the Beacon framework. Beacon stands for, especially for those of you who can't see the slides, Beacon stands for brand, entities, expertise, authority, content infrastructure, omnichannel presence, and narrative. These are the 6 things that you need to have in a specific sequence, unfortunately not in the order that they appear in the acronym, but it's not a perfect system. But these are the things that you need to have in order to be known, to be understood, to be cited, to be recommended. And I'm going to walk through all of them. But if you've ever like written an incredible piece of content or made like an amazing video and it doesn't do what you want it to do. It doesn't show up in the search results. People don't find it. They can't understand it. It's probably because one of these things is not quite firing on all cylinders. So now we're going to get to the diagnostic part. So if you are, looking at me on your whole screen, maybe minimize me and open up another window where you are able to open up your AI tool of choice. We're going to start with Google to start with. I want you to go into Google or Bing or whatever your like more traditional search engine is, and Google yourself. We're going to start with that as our baseline. You can Google your name. You can Google your business name. You can Google your services, which sometimes is interesting to test, because if you're Googling the services that you offer, it might not show your name. It might show who your competitors are. So go to Google, report back to me in the chat box. I want this to be something where you can tell me what's up, especially when we get into the AI prompts. We're going to move through Google pretty quick, but look at the ranks, especially if you're looking up your own name, your own entity. Is your website showing up first, or is something else ranking you? Are the pages that are showing up your content, or is it someone else's? Maybe it's a mix of them. Maybe it's your website and your LinkedIn and then a podcast episode you were on and then a Yelp review. And, it could be a combination. And the reason that we look at this first is because we want to understand how you're showing up, where you're showing up. And if you have an AI summary at the top of the page, is it accurate? Peaches says, I did this a few weeks ago and I was surprised how much Google knows about my personal self and your business. Yeah. And it's like, and I'll get into this in the next slide too, Peaches, but it's like, you are a person entity and your business is a business entity and you are the owner or founder of the business. And so it sort of like has that relationship in mind. So it might say like Peaches is the owner of business and they help X audience with this through these services. So it can sort of like mix through who you are as a person and what your business does well. Michelle says that depending on what you search, it pulls other people with the same name on LinkedIn. Yeah, and that's hard with people who have less, or I would say more common names. And that's why you can put in some of those modifiers of Michelle copywriter or whatever that is and see if it shows up that way. Alana says number one website, number two, LinkedIn, and then events that you run. That's great because it's all yours, right? And you want to be found for those events. Cassia says YouTube channel comes up first, then Facebook, then website. And that happens a lot, especially if our websites are a little bit thinner or you have a really strong YouTube presence, because Google owns YouTube, right? It wants to show YouTube. Okay, Michelle says that if she looks up her name and web design, then it shows up. So keep telling me about Google, but I'll start guiding other people through the next set of prompts if they're ready for it. We're going to do basically the same thing, but we're going to do it in your AI tool of choice. If you're doing this in ChatGPT, then open up an incognito window, and that way it'll start from scratch. Or if you're already logged into your ChatGPT, or you want to try it in a tool like Claude, start the prompt with based on what's publicly available online and not from memory. And that's when it'll go pull it from around the internet. You can still go from training a little bit, but right, that way you're starting from scratch. It's not based on like what the previous conversations that you've had with these tools. And here are the questions to ask. Who is Peaches? That's just a really fun one to have in the chat box. Who is Peaches? What do they do and who do they work with? Same idea of what we just asked for from Google, but obviously the results are going to be different. Hold on, I want to get my my speaker notes out. Whoops. Okay, cool. Okay, so I'll let y'all share that information with me. Tell me, is this accurate or is it like generic? Because sometimes, especially when I was first starting to do this work and test it out, it would be like, Meg just does SEO. And it didn't have any information about my point of view. And it didn't say who I were. SEO for course creators, which is like sort of old language. But remember that a lot of these training modules scrape the internet in 2022 or 2023. And unless we have a clear distinction for what changed between then and now, it might be out of date information. So yes, I can absolutely repeat the question, Christine. And I have it up on the screen too, if that helps. Who is Christine? Whatever your last name is. What do they do and who do they work with? Chris says that they found some references on a Reddit. Oh, so maybe it was you, or maybe someone else was talking about you. If your answer is very generic, if it's not specific to you and your work, but it's sort of just like the category that you work with. Michelle is a web designer who designs websites, right? And sometimes these tools are like so confident in their very generic or wrong answers. If you're finding that, or even if you're not, here's a good follow-up question to figure out how this is working. Ask, where are you getting this information? Please provide links. And this will tell you how much of what AI knows about you is coming from your website versus how much is coming from other people's websites, old podcast interviews, your YouTube channel, right? It'll give you an idea of what the common places are that ChatGPT or whatever the AI tool is would find information about you. Megan says, ChatGPT has all my old stuff taken from old interviews with big podcasters in the industry. And I think the key part of that, Megan, is also big podcasters, right? They have more authority signals. So you can rewrite your whole website, but unless you have like an explanation of, oh, I was doing this and now I'm doing this, it's going to trust the big podcasters because it trusts them because they have more authority content. Peaches says that it's getting all the information from LinkedIn. That's awesome because that's something that you can own. That's something that you have control over updating. Okay. Now, there are a lot of things that happen frequently here. And I call this your brand entity is your person entity. It's how AI understands who you are or what your business is. And if this signal is muddy, if it's unclear, if it's fractured, then here's signs that that you might see right now in your results. Maybe AI doesn't know who you are, or it knows an old version of you. Megan's saying, it knows who I used to be from these old podcasts I did. Maybe your name isn't connected to your business. So it might be explaining what you do personally, but not say, Megan is the owner of this company. If your entity signals aren't clear, then your bios, your titles, your positioning may have shifted over time, but it still is showing up those old versions of you. And it's also possible that like different platforms are explaining you or describing you in different ways. And therefore AI is like, I don't know how to describe this person. And if they don't know how to describe this person, they say things like, well, Kasia might be living in Germany, but she might also be in Austria, or she's somewhere in Central Europe. Right? It sort of like zooms out and gets more generic if it doesn't have a clear answer. Okay, Kasia says there's no widely documented public figure. Interesting. So Kasia, in your case, I might say, go to this website and tell me who this person is that way, right? Let's see. A private person, possibly in home staging. Okay, well, it had an idea. It had a category for you, which is better than nothing. Couldn't find you. Michelle said couldn't find, but came back with real info. Claude gave 4 different people. I'm the second one on the list. That's great, right? That's second one on the list, especially if you have a common name, is a sign that it does know who you are. Okay, so here's a quick fix. This is not the only fix, but this is something to consider if you are seeing some of these problems, some of these patterns of your entity signal isn't clear, it doesn't know who you are. Write what I call an entity signal statement and put it everywhere. It doesn't have to be verbatim. It doesn't have to be, copy paste everywhere, but something along the lines of this person's name is like your title or category, you work with a specific audience, and then what outcome they get when they work with you. So Michelle is a web designer for Minneapolis-based business owners who want more foot traffic, right? And you can mix and match that a little bit to say brick and mortar business owners in Minneapolis or whatever that looks like. But we want the signal to be the same across all the places. Not some places it's Michelle's a web designer, in some places she's a web strategist, in some places she's a graphic designer, in some places she's we just want it to be fairly clear and consistent, not verbatim, but consistent. One of the best places to update this as a point where Google's going to look is your LinkedIn. So for those of you who said they got all the information on LinkedIn, make sure that your LinkedIn title matches what's on your about page. Keep it consistent across all those different places. It's not just what you say on your website anymore. It's happening across, yes, your website is the clearest place, but it also needs to be corroborated across multiple platforms for you to be more trustworthy. Zoe says, Claude, use your website, LinkedIn, podcast, magazine interviews, PhD university, and podcast pages where you are a guest. Perfect, right? And that's exactly what we're saying, is that it can go to your website, but your website is not the single source of truth anymore. It doesn't trust websites alone. It trusts anything that can be corroborated by other platforms that it trusts. So the fact that it's a university on there definitely helps your case because you're being corroborated by an institution that it trusts. Alana says, both Claude and Chatty were about the same as Gemini, and they were accurate, but a bit vanilla. And that's right. Accuracy is important, but will come. Thank you for setting me up, not for this slide, but for 5 slides from now. So thank you, Alana, for queuing me up with that. Next thing to think about after we figure out making sure that these tools know who you are, the next thing to think about is, what do you do best? What is your expertise? So head back into your tool, or tools, plural. I love that people are already like, Gemini said this, and Chatty said this, and Claude said this, and Perplexity is way faster at updating these if you guys want to check that one too. And next, AI prompt. What is Zoa an expert in? Now, not everyone has to ask about Zoa. It's awkward to say, like, what is blank name? What specific knowledge or approach do they bring that other people don't? I'm going to leave that on the screen for a hot second. Oh, Chris, I just say Chatty for ChatGPT. I'm sorry. I should have said that. I talk about these tools all the time, and I'm like, ChatGPT is just a mouthful, and I just call it Chatty or Chatty G. Sorry. Oh, ChatGPT for Carol had a lot of garbage sites with spammy-looking information. That's good to know. And when we get to the authority slides, Carol, we'll come back to that because that might be something that you need to either improve your own content to outrank and make sure that you're more authority than the garbage sites, or go track down those garbage sites and be like, hey, stop it. Take that down. Okay. While y'all are doing this prompt, what's this business an expert in? What's this person an expert in? Let me talk about what I often see here, give you the follow-up prompt if you need it. If the result is like not that detailed or pretty generic, you can follow up with like, why would somebody hire Carol instead of another consultant? Especially if it's very generic and it's like, Carol's a consultant who helps people. Then it's like, well, okay, but why would you hire Carol instead? And what this should show you is whether or not these AI tools can articulate your differentiation. If this isn't clear, if you haven't put a stake in the ground and said, I am an expert in this, then it's going to default to what your category is. Michelle's a web designer. Kash is a home stager, right? It's going to go to the basic information of your category instead of being able to say a web designer for these people. Michelle says Claude's pulling from corporate experience and flagging the differentiators versus ChatGPT, Chatty, is pulling more from your current niche. So Claude's leaning a little bit more corporate, it sounds like, and ChatGPT might be leaning more into what you've created on your website. And that's why it's really interesting to test these multiple tools, is that if your clients are only testing one of these, you want to make sure that they're getting all the information that they need. So it says you're liking what you find, but you want to make some specific shifts to be more specific. I love that recognition. Okay, so here's what I see often when these expertise signals aren't quite as clear as they could be. So sometimes these tools will describe what you do, but not why you approach it that certain way or how you think about it. It might just have like a list of your services without being like, and here's how this person's different, right? It might list your services accurately, but it can't explain who it's for or why you do it that way. If any of you saw my recent series on frameworks and expertise, I have a lot to say about this that I can't do in an hour. It might like give you credit for being like, wow, Zoa knows a lot about health and wellness, but like not get into any specifics about it. And it might pull more information from external validators than from your own website or your published work. So it might be like, as Michelle explained on this podcast, here's what she does, because it trusts the podcast, but it might not really understand from your website what it is that you do best. Okay, so if you're struggling with your expertise signals, these might be some signs that you're working with, some of these patterns that I see from people. Often when I see experts who are getting these super generic answers in their search results, it's because their best thinking and their differentiators either live in their heads or they live in client calls and client interactions and haven't been articulated or published in a way that AI can pull them out, extract them, parse them. So if this is the case for you, then AI can put you in a category. It can't say health coach, but it can't explain your approach or what you help people with or who you work with. Often when I work with experts, we've been told by our copywriters that we have to use our sales pages to describe everything and say like, here's the results that my people got and look at these testimonials. But we don't necessarily have the framework that says, here's how they got those results. And sometimes your process isn't articulated on your website, but it does exist in your onboarding materials. It just isn't in public content. And if you haven't published your expertise, then AI can't find it. And if AI can't find it, then neither can the clients who are searching for what it is that you do. Okay, so here's a quick fix for that. Again, not the overall everything fix, but a quick fix. Write an explanation page, not a sales page. I think we've all been conditioned to start with sales page. What are the outcomes and what are the features and what are the benefits? But no, I want an explanation page that's like, what's your approach to this work? How is it different? Why does it get better results? This could be called something like how I work or my approach or how I'm different, right? When in your navigation, if you were to put it up there, that's where it would live. The goal isn't to say like, let me replace working with me with a page that explains everything that I've ever done. But it's more like prove that you have an approach that's different from everyone else and let people sort of envision themselves working with you. You would hire Sandra for a structural diagnosis and intervention when the organization's problems look persistent, cross-cutting, or poorly served by more processes. Sandra's is not generic. It's very specific to a very specific audience. So that's a great answer for you, right? Saleh, often this page will either be like a cornerstone post on your blog, or it could even go into your main navigation. These sort of approach pages are very, very important to the AI tools. So they need to be front and center, often right up there with your homepage, your about page, your approach. That's new in the last 3 to 5 years, is really putting our thinking front and center. I got to move a little faster, don't I? Okay, the third signal. Oh, I'm not doing so bad. Okay, the third signal is your narrative. And this is what I call it narrative because it's like, this is the human part. This is the thing that makes you you. This is the thing that differentiates you from not just everyone else in your industry, which some of the expertise work should do, but like this differentiates you from what would show up in AI if you weren't posting. So the 2 prompts that you can use to test your narrative And again, I'll leave these slides up for a minute. I know you have to retype them. Type them in your own language. That's cool. How does your name approach your topic differently than others in this space? What's their point of view? It used to be that like just providing the same content in a more structured format was enough, or like, here's the 5 steps to make your WordPress plugins work. The tutorials without any point of view. But AI can do all of that itself. It has the knowledge in its training modules. What it wants is the human part. It wants opinions. It wants use cases. It wants, I failed at this and here's why I had to pivot. It can't replicate that. It can only mimic it. So it needs human examples. And it trusts them more because it feels more real. Here's another question. What makes your work distinctive? What would be lost if this person weren't in the conversation? You can ask ChatGPT or whatever your tool is. What makes Chris's work distinctive from other people in the industry? Chris just said it's something interesting, which is I'm thinking that I will get AI to rewrite my About Me page. I think that's a great idea, but what I'm going to prompt you to do instead is not say, go write my About Me page. I would have you say, what information would you want to be on my About Me page? Ask me questions so that to help me differentiate myself and to help me figure out how to make my expertise shine on my About page. So not just, hi, ChatGPT, please write my About page, but really think through a lot of these pieces I'm talking about. How do I tell my story in a way that is compelling, expertise forward, and showcases my methodology? That's a very different About page than just like, Chris helps business owners to make more money, right? Like we want it to be so specific. And we need the pages to do a lot more work than they used to, especially your homepage, your About page, your methodology page. Like those are doing a lot of heavy lifting for you. Some things that I often see when people are struggling with this particular signal, it will describe your work interchangeably. Michelle's a web designer. Or if you were to take that summary or explanation of what you do, you could swap in any of your competitors' names and it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't make a difference. Other things that I see from people who are struggling with their narrative and their point of view is the ChatGPT can't identify a clear point of view or philosophy around your work. Sometimes it'll summarize what you do, but not how you do it. And maybe your description sounds honestly like a little bit AI generated, probably because it basically is. Like it's just generic category signals. And this is often what happens when your content is accurate. It's factually accurate. It's informative, but it's more like tutorials or here's a problem that I see than like how I've experienced this. How have I helped my clients with this? What does my experience teach me from this? Here are the things that I hate in my industry. If you don't have any lived experience, if you don't have any stated opinions, then you don't have any proof that you've actually done the work. So your content sounds like it could be anybody's content. So what's the fix for this? Again, one quick fix. I have about 30 in my back pocket. Think of your point of view as or your brand voice, if you want to think of it that way, as a signal to AI that you are in fact a human. So go publish a post that isn't like 5 ways to write a blog post, but more like, here's why I write my blog post this way and why the way that other people do it doesn't work as well. So here's like some prompts, which are not prompts. Here are some title suggestions, Mad Libs, why I stopped doing this common industry tactic. What is the thing that nobody tells you about your industry, or my honest take on this topic, right? Just differentiate yourself from the norm here. Okay, signal number 5 is your content infrastructure. Go to your AI tool, ask what are the most important and authoritative pages on what your website is, and then include your links. And Here's my backup question, my backup prompt. If AI is like, oh, it's their homepage, or like if they get it wrong, if they cite something where you're like, oh, I don't even do that anymore. Ask this question. What content from your name would be most useful for trying to understand their approach? Because sometimes your approach or your way of thinking or your perspective is deeply embedded in your content, but it hasn't been kind of foregrounded in the way that you're describing what it is that you do. So you might have a ranty blog post, but it doesn't specifically say, and here's how I would fix it. Or I just worked with a client who had a really, really strong 5-part methodology. And it was just 5 words on the sales page. It hadn't been clearly articulated and fleshed out to be like, no, here's what this process looks like. So if you're struggling with your infrastructure, these are some of the common patterns. You have a lot of content, but it's hard to figure out which of them is the most important. You'll notice over here in my pictures, I did like puzzle pieces that are spread out. You have all the pieces. You have some of the people that I work with have 300 podcasts and 200 blog posts, and they have so much information, but it's scattered. And there's no like spine. There's no backbone. There's no like one piece of content that's like, here's why all of this matters. And AI might cite old posts or talk about things that are no longer aligned with your current way of thinking. You don't have that one defining piece of content to tie everything together, or you've written a ton, but it's like you publish show notes that are big blocks of text in a transcript, and that's not necessarily structured in a way that AI can understand. So if this is the case for you, then your ideas might not be organized in a way that AI can understand, as all of these pieces fit together into something. Like I said, maybe your content is scattered, maybe it's audio, maybe it's not unstructured pages, maybe they're not linked to each other in a way that makes sense. You might have like a lot of information, like depth-wise, but you don't have the architecture to say, here's the cluster. Here's what all of this points to. These are all in this page. And there's no start here page. And so your best thinking hasn't been consolidated into a way that AI can cite it. So if this is the case, then figure out what one of those core things is that you talk about. Figure out what all of the content is that you've already created on that topic, and then make one post that is like, here's the guide, right? Here's the definitive thing that you need to know. Take the concept you want to be found for, grab all those supporting posts, link to those supporting posts, and then link those supporting posts back to the guide. This is a much bigger process. And then make sure that somewhere on that page, this can answer some of those questions that we asked earlier. So the expertise question and the narrative question, and maybe even the entity questions, can be answered by this post. Who is Zoa? Why does she think differently? What she's the best at? That can all be answered by this one piece of really strong content that has all the supporting infrastructure around it and scaffolding to hold up this idea. But all these different puzzle pieces don't make a coherent body of work. All right, I was wrong earlier. I said that was Signal 5. This is Signal 5. Omnichannel. Not all of this can live on your website. You do have to have some corroborating information from other places around the internet. You can't just say, well, I'm the best. I'm the best. You need to have both multiple channels where people can find you that say the same things and other people talking about you. So your prompt here is, where can I find blank's work? What platforms or publications feature their content or mention them as an expert? I'm going to encourage you, in addition to if you're testing this in ChatGPT or Claude, also test this in Perplexity. ChatGPT and Claude tend to have I'm going to say 3 to 6 month lag, depending on how often their training is updated. Perplexity is live retrieval based. So you might see things showing up in Perplexity that you've done more recently than that. That means that they're parsable. It means that they can be searched. It's just, they might not get to the more synthesis-based systems for a while. Nicole says, this is my problem. Everything is being sourced from my own content. Nicole, it's really important that your content lives first and that you have that, like, I am the expert in this. Here's my point of view. And then if that's how you're feeling and you're like, all right, I locked in, these tools know who I am. They know my expertise. I made it super clear. I have a point of view. It's clear to read. then there's a reason that I put this at 5, which is now you can go out and get on to other people's podcasts or create the YouTube channel where you explain what's happening, or, create a Substack where you can share this information, or whatever your distribution mechanism is that's public. Sometimes people will be like, well, I have my website and I have my email list, but your emails aren't public citable resources. AI can't parse those. So you need to find maybe one additional place on the internet. Maybe it's your LinkedIn profile where you're like, hey, I'm still talking about this here. And then maybe you go and get on other people's podcasts or become a guest contributor in an industry blog or do directory listings. You need other people to say, yes, Nicole is the best at this. Michelle says, yep, this is my challenge too. Yeah. And I feel like we could have more of one of these as a challenge. But especially I work with a lot of introverts who are like, I will write all day, but don't make me go promote myself, and this could be really difficult. So this might be you if AI finds your website and nothing else. If it finds you on one platform, but it can't corroborate that information elsewhere. It returns your social profiles, but social profiles are typically very thin. LinkedIn is maybe the outlier, but Instagram posts are short. Threads are intentionally short. Facebook is gated, right? So it can't always pull from that information. So there's no substantive content. And often people who are struggling with this don't have those third-party links, those other authorities who are saying, yep, I verify what it is that they're saying. Backwards. And so this problem for you, if you might have isolated signals where your content lives in one place, but it's not reinforced anywhere else. And if you're creating constantly, but you're not distributing, then AI might still see you making sources, but it doesn't necessarily trust you because you're the only one saying it. You can't just self-declare that you're the best. You also have to have other people say, yes, she is the best. So here's the quick fix for this one, which is not all that quick. Most of them aren't. Identify one offsite location to establish or strengthen your signal. So contribute an article to an industry publication, do some podcast interviews where you're cited as an excerpt. Try to make sure that you get show notes linked back to you. If you can, in those podcast show notes, ask the person to use your entity signal statement that we did as the quick fix back in Signal 1, where it's like, Meg is an AI discoverability strategist at Levitt First Search, where she helps businesses to show up on ChatGPT and Google, right? If you can get them to use that exact phrase, even better, but just the mention is stronger than nothing. Directory listings on credible industry sites. And again, you usually have a description there. This is another great spot for that entity signal to show up. LinkedIn article. You could do a LinkedIn article about the framework post that you did in our content infrastructure quick fix. All right, last one. Still with me. Shake it out for a minute. Last one in the Beacon framework is authority. Here's the question for the prompt. Who would you recommend for this topic? This isn't about you. This is about your topic. This is about your category. And then a follow-up question. Under what circumstances would you recommend this person instead? So who would you recommend for AI discoverability? Under what circumstances would you recommend Meg instead? And that way you get this sort of I call it a competitive landscape analysis of who else is in this space, who else is showing up in these queries, how am I differentiated from those people? When I do this search, it's like Meg cares about language, she works with smaller businesses, and she wants to help them with the infrastructure and not just the content, right? This is maybe of the 12 posts, 12 prompts I've given you in this, maybe the most important one, because this tells you whether AI can recommend you for anything at all. Often they're recommending you alongside people who are nothing like you. So I did this in a workshop a couple of weeks ago, and the coach was very, very specific in who she worked with. But the recommendations were like Marie Forleo, because it was just like, oh, well, she's a coach and so is Marie, right? So it's category match, is not necessarily competitors. If you're struggling with your authority, then AI can describe you, but it can't articulate why someone would choose you instead of the alternatives. It might list you as an option, but not the first option. And it might give you credit for the topic, but not necessarily cite you or recommend you. And in this case, if you're missing those authority signals, then AI understands what you do It has that brand entity, it has that expertise, but it doesn't prioritize you as a source. You're legible. That means AI can understand what it is that you do, but you're not being cited. You're not being recommended. Maybe the other 5 signals that we've already talked about are working, but AI treats you as one of many in your category, not as this person is unmistakable. This is also the last one to build. And there's a reason that I put it last, because you need to have the other 5 pieces in place. It's also the hardest one to fake, because you have to have, this is clearly who you are. This is what you're best at. Everybody else agrees with you, and you can understand what it is that they're doing. And unless you have all of that, and you have a point of view about it, unless you have all of that, then you're going to get mixed up with other people in these reviews. You can't just like go out and be like, well, I am the best. You have to earn it by getting the other signals right first. And so if this is where you're feeling stuck, this is a really good time to like prompt the system and be like, what would it take for me to become the go-to in this topic? What would I need to do? Typically, if I'm prompting the system on these, it'll say something like, you need more external citations, like you need more PR, you need a more specific positioning statement because you're getting confused with other competitors, you need more case studies or client outcomes to prove that expertise, to prove that you know what you're doing. Maybe you need a named framework to have that thought process articulated. Peaches asks, can blogs help with this type of authority? Yes, your blogs can help with the expertise, but then you also want to be on other people's blogs or get them talking about you at the same time. So it can be kind of both on-site and off-site. And then the goal that I like to work towards, and you've probably seen this on my website if you've poked around, is the idea of unmistakable authority. This is when you're not getting lumped into the categories with anybody else. It's when you're able to go into the system and say, what is this person found for? What do they do best? And it's like right here, and here's who they're best for, and here's when I recommend them, and here's, maybe you're showing up in those recommendations without needing to go through all of that work because you're just so clearly the best in class and you're not getting confused with anybody else. You're understood, you're trusted, you're recommended. But you have to do all of these stages to get there. And this is a really long game. But these stages along the way can help you get clients. You know, this isn't like an all or nothing thing. It's a slow climb, and then it does have a little bit of a hockey puck or hockey stick thing. It does compound over time. The more you do of this, the stronger those entity signals become. The more it trusts you, the more it recommends you. It becomes a bit of a flywheel. Every other signal that you're working on also makes this one easier. So let me run through those again, coming up right on time, which is honestly impressive that I've moved through this so quickly. Okay, your brand entity. That's who you are. That's knowing who you are, what your business is, what you do, who you do it for. Your expertise. That's what you do best. It's not everything you could possibly do. It's, especially if you're just getting started or this feels a little bit like you're either hidden or you're unclear, it's the first thing that you do best. It's like, what's the one thing that if you could clone your clients for it, that could be your starting expertise. And then you can expand adjacently eventually, but like lock in on what is the one thing that I want to be found for. Your authority comes last, but that's that idea of other people are talking about you, other people are recommending you. Your content infrastructure, these tools are able to actually read what it is that you're doing, not just the, this person has FAQs and this person has very clear internal linking, but also like there's a body of work that makes sense. Omnichannel presence, you are not just on your own website and in your own sort of cave, but other people are talking about you and reinforcing those signals, and you're distributing out to other channels, not just your website. And the narrative, that's your point of view, that's your opinions, that's the things that makes your content human that AI cannot replicate on its own. If you have any of these broken, AI might get the wrong version of you, your thinking might not be published, your content might sound generic, your answers might not be organized in a way that they're easy to find and read, you might be only findable on your website and nowhere else, and maybe AI knows you, but doesn't necessarily trust you or prioritize you. Most people have more than one of these that they're trying to fix. That's totally normal. But often there's also one that's blocking the other one. So that's why I do them in that order of entity, expertise, narrative, omnichannel, No, content infrastructure, omnichannel authority. Because if it can't figure out who you are, it doesn't matter if you have the world's best content. And if it can't figure out how that content all fits together, then we need all of these things to sort of stack on top of each other. That's something that I teach in my program, which is called Signal. It's a mentorship. I call it that instead of a membership, because I think that people just want to be able to get mentored by me on how this applies to their specific businesses. It's $1,000 for the year. I structure it that way because I want you to have time to work through all of these trainings. Every one of these signals gets a week, plus we have implementation weeks, we have content feedback, we have office hours. So it takes 9 weeks to go through the entire training starting on April 28th. And then you have 10 months to implement. And I'll go through the training again in the fall. So that way maybe it'll land differently after you've actually done the work. And you can learn from other people who are in the community program with you and see how it's working for them. Because sometimes that learning from other people is the most valuable way to say, oh, that's what she's talking about. That's how that works. I see it now. Not just theoretical, but practical application. So I am right at the top of the hour. Wow. 2:30 exactly. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to do a Q&A. But if any of you need to leave, I completely understand. I appreciate your time and attention. I will send out more information about Signal in the following week. I don't do fast action bonuses because I don't believe that you should feel rushed to make a decision, especially something that is a big time commitment like this. So yeah, if y'all have any questions, please let me know. Oh, wow. Sandra got a really great. My first recommendation for independent, oh, now it's scrolling, structural diagnosis of recurring problems would be Sandra Helling. Isn't that fantastic when you have such a clear expertise that it's so my first recommendation would be you. Alana says it's super helpful. Thank you. Saleh, yes, I do offer one-on-one. If you want to email me, meg@loveitfirstsearch.com. We can just have that conversation because I've already worked with you. I know your business, so we can figure out what that would look like for anyone else who's there. Zoa, how big is the mentorship? I mean, Zoa, you were in Content Love Lab, or maybe even Attract and Activate when it was that. Probably about the same size, about 30 to 40 people in the group. But I do try to provide individual support. I don't have a cap on it, but it does tend to stay pretty small and intimate because I know that it's a big time commitment. Michelle says, Kelly says, you learned a ton. I'm glad to hear it, Kelly. Michelle says, AI answers, am I getting in my own way having 2 websites? I have a general website and I've niched down and have a focused industry website. No. 5 years ago, Michelle, I would have told you, nope, put them on the same website if it's for the same audience, if it's the same service. But no, I think now having those 2 separate pieces, you can do some entity triangulation and say, Michelle is the owner of this company and this company. And on your about page, you can cross-link to them and say, this is the more niche one, and here's the reason why. And here's the more general one, and here's the reason why. And then put both of them on your LinkedIn or explain how both of them fit together. And that will actually help reinforce the strength of your entity as you're an expert in this and this, as opposed to them being competing against each other. It's way different than it used to be. It's one of maybe the biggest changes in that SEO to AI shift is different. I have 6 websites that all triangulate against each other because that way, my entity in the middle is being reinforced by my own body of work. And then I'm getting the outside signals. So no, that should actually be pretty cool for you. I would want to look them over and be like, here's how to set this up to make sure that it works. But it's not competing against yourself unless it's exactly the same thing with different names and it's not clear that you're the same person. Yeah. Sandra says, I worked a lot on not letting it collapse into generic consulting mush, because I think it does. It's very easy to just go generic and sound good, but then it ends up sounding like boilerplate language and word salad as opposed to here's what I actually do. Michelle says it's been a huge help. Sally says, thank you. Wonderful that you remember. Yeah. Well, you also have a very unique name, so that helps. Michelle says, amazing. Thank you. I have 2 huge passions and audiences. All right. Well, thank you to everyone who came. I will be sending out the replay. I'll send out more information about the Signal program. If you have any questions, you can just reply to that email and ask any questions directly to me, and I'll answer you in that email. And that's sometimes easier than doing it in a chat box too. All All right, y'all have a fantastic day. If I can remember how to stop the replay up here. All right, and we're ending. So thank you all so much.